Brock Purdy is hurt. Javon Hargrave is out for the year. And oh, yeah, the 49ers gacked away another 10-point fourth quarter lead yesterday. We'll talk about all of it on Under Review. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Under Review on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Vish Kumar. And Vish, what the hell is going on with the 49ers? Brock Purdy's hurt. Javon Hargrave's out for the year. It feels like 2020 all over again.
Yeah, not good things, especially coming off of such a bad loss. Like, you would hope that, hey, we would hear some good news, like nobody got hurt coming into a pretty good stretch for the 49ers of big games, 2 division games and 1 game versus New England that's so winnable. And yet here we are discussing one of their highest paid players in Javon Hargrave being out for the year with torn tricep injury, which is concerning. Anytime you have a long-term type surgery for a guy that's 32 years old, that's always scary when you're looking at his long-term mortality in the NFL. And then Brock Purdy being banged up, that's the nature of the NFL. Quarterbacks tend to get banged up, but not ideal for the 49ers to have Brock Purdy dealing with back soreness.
He got an MRI. I think he's a little more than banged up. They gave him an MRI. You don't get MRIs for no reason. Shanahan said he hopes Brock Purdy can practice Wednesday. Excuse me for a minute while I'm just going to open this beer because this team is making me drink.
I'll stick to this water over here, H2O.
Yeah, and your giant squirt bottle. We know you're a fan of that.
Hey, relax, okay?
I'm just so frustrated with it. It's crazy to me that, like, you and I, we can't even break down the game right away because we got to get to this friggin' injury news. Other injury news, in addition to Brock Purdy, who maybe can practice Wednesday, which, by the way, Vish, if Brock doesn't play, this game against the Patriots is a toss-up. It's a 50-50 game.
You think so? Well, actually, I don't know what I'm. Yeah. You know what? I thought the Rams game was a guaranteed win. So you're right. It is a toss-up.
Brisbee Life on Twitch says Rob is drinking. Vish is streaming from an alley. It's a rough day. If you're not watching on the stream, Vish's background is a brick wall. He's hiding his location. I don't know where he's broadcasting from. He doesn't want us to know either. Apparently, it's an alley somewhere in any town.
I had to go with the virtual background settings. So that's really big here because it really takes away from my usually colorful and engaging background that everybody loves to see. Yeah.
His pitch black hostage area that he has. Other injury news coming out of the conference call. Christian McCaffrey is going to Germany or has gone to Germany for an treatment or help with his Achilles. That is a very, very concerning sign, Vish. You don't go to Germany unless you're facing season-ending surgery, and this is a last-ditch effort. It feels like, to me, it's only a matter of time before we find out Christian McCaffrey is not going to be able to contribute in 2024.
Yeah, I think the McCaffrey thing got very concerning when he was practicing on Tuesday and was put on IR on Thursday. Like, that was already very bizarre for where things were going, especially with how much they guaranteed he was returning week 1. Then it was a shock that he didn't play week 1, whether it was a shock to them or not. It was a shock to the public that he didn't play week 1. And then from there, things have only seemingly gotten worse. I agree in terms of not being able to rely on Christian McCaffrey, but Jordan Mason has been one of their best players in this young season, and they've been able to run the football. And sure, they miss Christian McCaffrey. He's their best offensive player. There's no doubt about that. But Rob, I still look at this team and I feel like they're a playoff team with Jordan Mason as their starting running back. And I know that's not saying a lot, but there's still some hope left here despite all of the injuries, which goes to show how good the coaching is from Kyle Shanahan, though yesterday there were a couple of errors and how good the talent is.
Is the coaching that good? We can talk about that in a minute. Werlock says, would have been great if this team got injured next season. That way we can lose every game and draft Arch Manning in 2026. Oh man, let's not even go there. I know the feeling, though. It's very frustrated. Adrian asks, didn't Eric Armstead do the same thing last year with his plantar fasciitis? Did he go to Germany?
Oh, that's I wouldn't know. That's a really good question and point. I have no idea.
I don't know. I'm trying to Google it really quick. I don't see anything, but that doesn't mean it's not true. I'm not saying you're wrong, Adrian. I just can't find it really quick off the top of my head. Observed Natural Evolution says Brock injured. Yes, he has a sore back. Kyle Shanahan described it as. He got an MRI. The MRI came back clean, supposedly. Hopeful Brock Purdy can practice on Wednesday. Hopeful. This season is it just feels like it's getting away from him, Vish. Christian McCaffrey, who knows if we're ever going to see him again. Deebo Samuel is going to miss at least another game. George Kittle, Kyle Shanahan said, hopeful he can practice this week. We'll see. We don't know. We've seen D. Winters injured. He re-aggravated his injury. Javon Hargrave out for the year. I mean, the hits keep coming right now.
I see. This is what happens, though. This is what happens to a team that has gone to 3 straight NFC championship games. This is what happens to a defense that has been top 5 for 5 straight years. I think we did a thing last year where I talked about how the 49ers having a 5 straight years of having a top 5 defense was unheard of. And that's why I thought their defense was going to fall off a little bit last year, which it did. Because them, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Seattle Seahawks, Legion of Boom, were the only 3 defenses in the last 25 years that had 5 straight years of having a top 5 defense. With the same scheme and the same talent, that's unheard of. It falls off at a certain point. And I think that's what's happening. When you play so many games, the 49ers have played 3 extra seasons in the last 3 years, essentially, because they've played 3 playoff games. These are the things that tend to happen. I think the real opportunity that we should be looking at is that we've been talking about turnover for this team for the last couple years. When should they do it? Are they doing it? When should they do it? All of those things. Now it's happening in front of our eyes. These guys getting banged up is forcing young players who we are uncertain about, who they need to develop quickly, to now come in and be key contributors. The Rams last year are a good example of how a young team with that many young players can mature over time. They're trying to do the same thing this year, given that they also suffered a lot of injuries. The 49ers injuries aren't so long-term outside of Christian McCaffrey and now Javon Hargrave. There's still Deebo Samuel coming back. There's still George Kittle coming back. And their season only gets difficult later on. I don't really look at Arizona, New England, Seattle, this 3-game stretch as the worst part of their schedule, regardless of what faces you make, Rob. And so therefore...
yeah. I thought you were going to end that sentence. I thought you were going to say like something different. Like, oh,
no. And so therefore, I think this is actually a great opportunity. And perhaps maybe a guy like Devondre Campbell, we don't need you anymore. We don't have use for it. Let's see what we got in the D. Winters conversation. It might be time for moves like that, although it's still early in the year, and I expect Shanahan to not make any moves like that because he wasn't even making those moves when they were 3-5 back in 2021. And so therefore, I think that they will be going all in with all of these veterans anyway. But that's kind of my overall take.
We all know Kyle Shanahan has his favorites. He has his favorites. If you are in the Shanahan trust tree, you gotta either get injured or you gotta do something really bad for a really long time to get out of it. With certain guys can get put in the doghouse immediately, but certain guys, for whatever reason, you can't get in. You can't get in. Listen to this exchange from the conference call when he was asked why we haven't seen Jacob Cowing on the field.
He's still working to get out there. You know, he's trying to get more comfortable with the offense and just earn a role with it, and gets closer and closer each week. Still got a bit to go, though.
Yeah, how has he been looking? I mean, he's obviously back, not off the injury list, but does he look like he's normal health-wise other than that?
Oh, yeah, he's totally healthy.
Is it more mental understanding of the offense and where he needs to be?
There's lots of reasons that go into it, but
lots of reasons.
He hasn't been able to make his way into that group yet, and the more he gets comfortable with the offense and the more consistent he gets, then he'll earn those opportunities.
What the hell has Ronnie Bell done to earn those opportunities, Vish? The only time he's on the field, he drops the ball. When they put him at punt returner last year, he was miserable. Yet somehow Ronnie Bell has earned those opportunities over Jacob Cowing. And what happened? In crunch time, when they needed one play, and Brock Purdy puts the ball up perfectly for Ronnie Bell. The 2 Rams corners overrun it. There's nobody there. Clang, off his hands.
Yeah,
What?
so I'm not defending Ronnie Bell. That's in play that NFL players just have to make. Like, he put it up top. It was slightly underthrown, which was perfect because the cornerback was in phase. Cornerback overruns it. Kobe Durant doesn't even contest the play.
Right.
And it's a free catch. He kind of jumps in the air and hangs for some reason and just straight up drops the ball. He choked in the moment. Not great. I think he's going through some mental yips, given that these drops have existed since preseason from what we've seen him.
They were in college. In college, he had a big drop. They were talking about, he's overcome the drop. This is who Ronnie Bell is, Vish. He shouldn't be on the roster.
That I agree with. I didn't select him to make the roster either, but now he's here. In terms of him versus Cowing, I find these conversations in general to be a little bit difficult to have because at the end of the day, Shanahan is paid a lot of money to win games. And like the idea that he would somehow self-sabotage himself by keeping Cowing off the field because he favors Ronnie Bell or he prefers Ronnie Bell, which is actually in turn hurting his football team, which is hurting him because the wins and losses are ultimately tracked to him as the head coach. I don't necessarily buy. Now, I don't like his answer, and that's where I criticize him. Like, a lot of reasons is bullshit, but I also think that's on the reporter immediately to be like, what are those reasons? Like, that's your job in that spot. And I feel like that's where the conversation is more difficult. But in terms of blaming him on Cowing versus Ronnie Bell, I feel like that's the easy way out in terms of analysis. That's the lacking nuance way out, because when you really think about it, Shanahan is not so much of an idiot that he's going to purposefully keep Jacob Cowing off the field over Ronnie Bell if he feels in his heart of hearts that Jacob Cowing will do the job better than him. I don't think that's the case.
But he's biased. He has a bias, Vish. He doesn't like
He
rookies.
drafted Jacob Cowing in the 4th round.
He doesn't like rookies. Look at the rookies.
Ronnie Bell played as a rookie. He caught a touchdown week 3 as a rookie.
Yeah, he played a little. Look at the rookies who have started for Shanahan. Ayuk did not get run really until everybody got injured, right?
Ayuk started week 3.
McGlinchey started,
played, right? Or week 2 versus the Jets. He started.
Did he start?
I'm pretty sure he started. But again, you were right. Debo was hurt. I think maybe Marquise Goodwin was hurt.
Right.
You guys were hurt, but he started.
Pooney didn't get his shot until Feliciano and Burford both got hurt in front of him. He doesn't like rookies. I mean, God, it took multiple injuries for Garendo to even see the field for any type of anything. He doesn't like rookies. He has a bias. He has a bias toward veteran players. It's not that he says, I know Jacob Cowing is better, but I'm not going to play him. It's in his mind, Jacob Cowing is not better because he's a rookie. It's a bias that he has. It's a blind spot.
I don't think it's because he's a rookie, though. Debo Samuel started week 1, day 1 as a rookie. Dante Pettis played a lot as a rookie. Brandon Ayuk played a lot as a rookie. People are talking about Trent Sherfield. That happened in Brandon Ayuk's 2nd year. Now, I'm not defending Ronnie Bell at all. Like, he should have caught that pass. I don't think he should have made this team. Don't make this my opinion. But I think the entire thought process that he just has something against Jacob Cowing, I don't think that's particularly the case. I think they have certain expectations that need to be fulfilled for receivers to get on the field. Now, the questions of what those expectations are, whether those expectations are fair, whether those expectations make sense, that's a more reasonable conversation to me. But this idea that, like he just hates rookies or he doesn't want to play Cowing because he's a rookie, I don't think that's the case. And then speaking of Garendo, I think Garendo was an example of a player that didn't particularly look ready yesterday when they had to rely upon him because Mason seems to get tired. He doesn't seem to be built for the wear and tear that Christian McCaffrey took. And so they needed to go to Garendo yesterday because there was no Debo Samuel. And he got them a holding penalty on a wide zone play by hesitating, forcing Kyle Juszczyk to hold on to his block for just an extra second.
Break.
Yes.
That is such crap.
Yes.
Now we're blaming running backs for Kyle Juszczyk.
You can't hesitate. You have to hit the hole. Why did Trey Sermon get cut?
I'm not saying that Garendo didn't do the wrong thing. You don't have to hold Kyle Juszczyk. Doesn't mean you just break the rule. Like, no way. Give me a break. I think he does have a blind spot for rookies. I think his expectation is so high that when rookies make any kind of mistake, he's like, oh, nope, they're not ready. I can't do it. Like he'll tolerate mistakes from other players. He won't tolerate them from rookies. He won't.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's just hard because I don't know, and it's because he's never been asked to explain like what mistakes are the most grave to him, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because like we have an idea of things that I think we distribute as like good, bad, and all that. Like Jacob Cowing muffing that punt the way he did recovering it last year, I thought that was a big negative, but they continued to stick with him. Like they immediately forgave that mistake. Now, that could be because they have nobody else, so they have to rely upon him. But that's an example of that. That's the question I have. Like, what are his mistakes that he feels are non-negotiable? And I think my best guess, Rob, to like sum up this conversation and maybe instead of making an argument, kind of put it a bow on like the full point with Shanahan, is that he's maybe too obsessed with them being assignment sound with this scheme. Now, I think from his standpoint, that's the best way 11 people can work together if they're all doing their jobs correctly. But I think that's why he goes for guys who will do their job consistently over guys who just have innate physical talent. And I think that's the discrepancy here, because Ronnie Bell, as a veteran, likely always lines up on the right spot, takes the right number of steps on each route, stuff like that. And maybe those are the little details that Jacob Cowing is missing out on. Now, Cowing is clearly much more talented than Ronnie Bell. All of us have eyes. We can see it. We're not stupid. We saw it since preseason. But I can't just go with this idea that he doesn't like Jacob Cowing. That's why he's not playing him. There has to be much more depth and detail to it. And he's never asked. That's my bigger problem with this conversation. He is never asked to explain these things. There's never a follow-up question. There's never a follow-up ask. And that's why he gets away with these vague generalities like, oh, I have my reasons. We have this coming along, coming this, coming that. And then he's able to change it up. And then the moment anybody questions him about his changeup, he gets real personal and he's like, whoa, I never said that. You guys put words in my mouth, blah, 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 blah. And everybody backs off and they're like, okay, that's okay, Kyle, you do your thing. So my bigger problem is that he's not asked to explain the things that would give us answers to these questions. And instead we're now stuck making these type of generalizations like, oh, he prefers Cowing to Bell. Like, why would he self-sabotage himself if Cowing is really 100% in his mind better than Bell?
Because he doesn't think he's sabotaging himself. That's the point. That's where the bias comes in. I don't think he has anything against Jacob Cowing personally. I just think it's a blind spot for him. It's a bias for him. And, Kyle he's an old school coach in a new school coach's body. He really is. And
his coaching staff is old school, right?
Yes.
Bobby Turner, Chris Forrester.
And old school coaches, like how the rules were different back then, like Dean Smith didn't let freshmen play, right? Like a lot of times you had to earn it. And I think that Kyle, there's a lot of that. You got to overcome a lot. Like you don't get credit for playing Deebo Samuel as a rookie. He was a second-round pick. Of course you play him as a rookie. And the team had nothing talent-wise on the roster. Of course.
Hey. Don't sleep on Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin. And
give me a break. Oh God. It's
Kendrick Bourne.
So at least Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer Lee Chen. I don't know because it was a conference call, but it sounded like her. She tried to follow up and she followed up a couple of times, but I wish they kept going. I think that she got to the point where she didn't want to keep asking questions because it was a conference call and you wanted to let somebody else ask, but I wish somebody else picked up the ball and ran with it. What things go into it, Kyle? That's what we want to know. That's what we're really asking you, right? Essentially.
Yeah, and I would love to know what that is because you know what's funny? We speculated for 2.5 years about the Jordan Mason thing. Did we not? I kept saying, he's not assignment sound. He doesn't pass block. He doesn't do the right things in the pass game. But we would have this argument about a guy who was averaging 6 yards a carry for 2.5 years. And he saved all of us in 1 minute by explaining that Bobby Turner was not happy with how assignment sound Jordan Mason was. That was all it was.
Right, yeah.
And yet we had to debate it for 2 years. This is a similar kind of thing. But I also think sometimes he doesn't answer questions unless he has to. And why wouldn't he? It's not his job to tell us these things.
Right.
It's the media's job to get these things for us. And this is where I get a little frustrated because I don't like crapping on the media all the time as much as I do, but they really just don't do their job at certain points. And this is an example as why me as a fan, I get frustrated because we don't get information.
It can be frustrating at time, although I felt like, honestly, that conference call, the worm is starting to turn a little bit. The questions to Kyle, it was less fluff on the conference call, and it was more, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And he doesn't like it. And a perfect example, we've talked a lot about that play where Brock Purdy has Brandon Ayuk open deep and he doesn't throw it. And Kyle was asked, why didn't Brock throw it on the play? Here was Kyle's answer.
BA had a deep curl route and they busted the coverage. So BA did the right thing and just took off and went to that hole. And it kind of caught Brock by surprise because, BA was number 2 in the progression. When he looked to him, BA wasn't in the right spot because they busted a coverage. And then he went down the field and Brock thought about it. He just wasn't sure where the rest of the safety was or anything since he wasn't anticipating that to happen. And it would have worked, obviously, if he let it go. But that happens sometimes. Defense busts a coverage. And if you're not looking at the guy the whole time who all of a sudden turns it into a go route, you can't always just let it rip.
So after that question, Kyle was asked, like, what coverage were they supposed to be in? What coverage were they in? What did they end up doing? Like more details on the coverage. And he chuckles. There's like a pause and he chuckles and he's just like, he gives this condescending little laugh. And then he explains it in very technical football jargon. Like he laughs like, oh, you're too stupid. You're not going to know the explanation anyway. Then he purposely goes out of his way to make the explanation as complicated as possible.
Can you play it for us?
I have the full conference call, but I'd have to specifically find it. And then Mayoko tries to make a joke out of it and be like, oh yeah, that's what I thought. And Kyle like laughs again, to me, very condescendingly. Like anytime you try to get more detail out of him, he does not like it.
See, I don't think that that's condescending though. I don't mind that, honestly, because that explanation to me, the one he just gave, I thought that was a fantastic explanation. You can kind of see that thought process if you go back and watch the play of Purdy getting to Ayuk. Then he sees Ayuk further than he thought. Then he takes a hitch up and he thinks he's going to run into the lineman in front of him. So then he doesn't turn. And then he comes back to the center of the pocket and he tries to reset and throw it there, but the play is dead. Then he starts running around for 2.5, 3, 4, 5 minutes and throws it to Javon Jennings, I think, for a 5-yard gain or 4-yard gain. Am I correct in the description of the play?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so I think that ends up happening. So I thought that was a fantastic explanation from him. The football jargon one, I would love to hear this one. I feel like you're pulling it up right now. Maybe we could talk about it too. It's interesting. I have always found him to be a good answerer of football questions when they're asked of him. I generally just find the questions to not be so good.
The first answer was a good answer. I like that. But then when he got pressed, to me, it just came across as very condescending. I was trying to find it while you were talking. I can't find it. I should have had the audio, in fairness to Kyle, so people could listen for themselves. To me, it came across as very condescending. But I felt like the worm was starting to turn. Like the questions are more focused now. They're more critical, or at least questioning. We're getting less. What'd you think of this play? How great was it to have Talanoa Hufanga back? Like, forget that.
Did anybody ask him about the punt?
He did talk about, he kind of threw special teams under the bus a little bit at the end of the conference call. It's funny. After the game, he said, oh, we anticipated that fake punt there. We were ready for it. They just beat us. They were successful on it anyway.
Which was a terrible answer.
Right. Because that's even worse, right?
Yeah.
If you were prepared but then he got asked about special teams at the end and he said, I always love the special teams guys to help win, but my biggest thing is to not help lose, which, of course, I hate that philosophy, but whatever. We had a bad one in Minnesota with the block punt, and then we had a bad one this week with giving up the fake punt. So those are two things we've got to shore up. I would always love to make plays and stuff on special teams, but the biggest thing is to not be one of the reasons that you lose, and those are two huge things, one in Minnesota and yesterday on the fake punt. That's stuff we've got to be more prepared for. First as coaches and get our guys ready for that a lot better than we did yesterday. But I thought you were prepared for it, Kyle. Which is it?
Yeah, that's total crap to me too, especially because from a special team standpoint, I didn't feel like those were special teams errors. I thought those were situational football game script errors. Let's look at the 3 big ones, right? The field goal miss, the punt return at the end of the game, and the fake punt. The fake punt, look, Bones Fassel is not the special teams coordinator of the Rams anymore, but they tried the fake punt against them when they've played them in Dallas. They've gotten them, the Rams specifically, with McVay when Fassel was the special teams coordinator have gotten them with a fake punt multiple times in this era. So to me, to be prepared in a 14-0 football game on that 4th and 5, when you essentially feel like, hey, they're desperate, they got to try something, that they were that play away from being 0-3. And look, they might have been prepared for it. Usually, if you're prepared, you go punt safe. We've seen the 49ers go punt safe in the past where they keep their defense on the field. They did not do that.
They did later. They kept Bosa and Warner and others out there.
Right, but they did not do that on that particular play. So let's say even then they're prepared. It's a total travesty. It's still a terrible reflection on the head coach that your team could not execute something that they were prepared for. So that's the first one. The second one with the 55-yard field goal, of course he's got to make the kick, right? Like that's the first things first. He's got to make the kick. But the sequence of events that led up to the kick were total bullcrap. It's 3rd and 8. I think it was 3rd and 8. And they were, I think, on the 40-yard line. And Sanchez, everybody's talking about in the commentary, are they playing for the field goal? The entire offensive sequence of Purdy running around for 12 seconds and then scrambling for 3 yards and diving on the left hash and then running Moody on and having him kick. And he didn't look like he was prepared in that moment to kick and all of that. That was crazy.
Wait, why did you say that about Moody?
I didn't feel like the way he came on and all of it, he looked a little rushed. I didn't like the entire operation. If you go back and watch how the Purdy play ends to how it goes there, it just does not feel good. It does not feel like Moody was prepared that he was going to kick a very long field goal in that moment.
I would have to rewatch that specific part to say about Jake Moody. I mean, yes,
you got to make the kick though.
Yes, you want your kicker to make that kick in that spot, but it's a 55-yard kick. It's not like the one he missed in Cleveland, right?
They didn't play for the field goal in that moment. That's, I guess, my bigger point. Like that was a moment where they could have just played in for the field goal, been like, Jake, you're kicking one from 50 plus here. We're gonna ask you to kick it, so we're gonna run it. Which part of the hash are you most comfortable booming this one from? You left hash. We're gonna run it left, get 2 yards, and you're gonna kick a 50+ yard field goal. Be ready. It didn't feel like one of those situations. It felt very reactionary. And then the last one.
Valerie says, I definitely thought Moody looked like he was ready to miss that kick.
Yeah. Either way, he's got to make the kick, right? I'm not defending that. And then the last one, dude, the punt, 4.22 seconds. Shout out to Johnny Dells. He posted this on Twitter. He tweeted 4.22 seconds on hang time is below the NFL league average for punts. It was a line drive that was below average hang time, punted right down the middle to the returner with 50 seconds and no timeouts left. You basically gave them a free win in that game by letting him return it into field goal range. And it starts off with a crappy punt straight to the guy, and then you don't make the tackle. The punt could have been improved. You could have punted it directionally. You could have punted it much higher in the air, forcing a fair catch. You were punting from nearly midfield? That was a total disaster. 3 special teams blunders. And I don't look at any of those blunders as being like, oh, those are special teams things where the 49ers are lacking talent in any of these positions. Like they spent a 4th round pick on this punter. They spent a 3rd round pick on this kicker. They've paid money for George Odom to be an exclusive special teamer. That's a team that's totally ill-prepared for game situations that come down to executing in special teams. Those are 3 different ones, from the kickoff to the punt to the fake punt, where those were 3 game script situations where this team was not prepared. To me, that starts from the head coach.
I mean, you've been talking about this punt. Like, I didn't think it was so egregious. Was it below average? Okay. Make the tackle. Make the tackle. Malik Mustafa was the first guy.
But if you don't give your returners a chance, it's his job from the 40-yard line to give enough hang time on that ball so everybody gets down there. If you punt a straight line drive to the returner.
There were guys down there. Kyle said that there was a clip in the back that wasn't called, which is like, okay, dude. Give me a break. We're blaming the officials.
Clete Blakeman was calling everything and anything and picking it up after too each time, even when it was actually a penalty. So I didn't want to hear anything from Clete Blakeman anymore.
He said there was a clip in the back which would have negated him from getting to the sidelines. But once they did end up clipping us, he got to that edge, and our contained player who was supposed to be there was not there. Right? That's not on the punt. That's on the friggin' return team, man. He was sucked up in the middle and didn't get to that, which led to a huge play.
It was a crappy punt.
That's coaching, that's playing, that's everything, but that's why it happened. We got to make sure we get a guy there because if they do get to the edge, however they get to the edge, you better have a guy in contain, and we didn't. And that's the point, Vish. The only way the Rams were going to win this game is if the 49ers let them have big plays, chunk plays, again and again and again. And the 49ers did. They let Tutu Atwell have a 50-yard catch. The guy he's doing everything he can to drop the ball. And they give up a catch to Tutu Atwell for 50 yards. They gave up a pass interference for 25 yards when Devondre Campbell is one-on-one with a tight end, which, by the way, Vish, this speaks to a whole other thing. We're almost a quarter of the way through the season now. We've got to reevaluate what we thought our priors were coming into the year. This is a bad defense. I was totally wrong about the defense. Totally. I thought it could be improved from last year.
Who was saying they hadn't improved? Who was concerned about the second linebacker and the defensive line depth and the secondary? Who said this is not the best secondary in the 49ers Shanahan era?
To be fair, I think everybody was concerned about the second linebacker, but you're right. You and I differed there. I thought it was going to be, and I was totally wrong about the defense. It's not just not the 49ers defense. It's a bad defense. Yeah. It's just bad.
Okay, yes, I agree. Like, jokes aside, like, there's a lot of concern. Starting with the Campbell one, I'm glad you went to the pass interference. Dude, I don't think the tight end would have caught the ball if Campbell just stood there. Like, that guy wasn't even trying to catch the ball. He was hoping that somehow, by God's gift on green earth, Campbell would interfere with him so he doesn't even have to try to catch the ball. Like, that's how these weapons were on the Rams. Like, I'm joking, but like the Tutu Atwell pay on the double pass, like DeMarcus Robinson, what are you doing? Like, he's like flying out of bounds trying to catch the football. They were not that good in terms of their skill weapons, and you summed up the point perfectly. Like, they were hoping the 49ers give them this game. McVay and Stafford, like, they were literally playing not to make a mistake. Let's somehow stay in this. Let's take our chance when we get it. Take our chance when we get it. And the 49ers just kept waiting, and gave them that chance. That's what sums up this game. And I think that's why so many of us as fans are frustrated, because that wasn't like any other loss in the Shanahan era. Like, that felt like they legitimately, in 2 minutes, gave the Rams the game in like 5 different just disastrous ways, from the Ronnie Bell drop to the punt return to the big play to Tutu Atwell busting the coverage to, Campbell struggling in coverage, getting beat twice, to Yadam getting picked on in moments, all of it.
I think that what we've seen through 3 weeks, the Jets, not so much because Nathaniel Hackett is terrible.
Ouch.
This defense, everybody knows what they're going to do. They get completely disassembled. The Rams put a guy in motion, put that tight end in motion specifically to get Devondre Campbell in one-on-one coverage. As soon as he sees Campbell go with that tight end, whoop, that's where Stafford's going. Look, he drops back to pass. There's no hesitation there. He knows on the critical downs against the Vikings, go look. Every time they broke the rules of the 49ers defense, the idea that they have to get back to playing this defense, the scheme is stale. It's outdated. It's too common around the league. Offenses have figured it out now. The 49ers need something new.
So,
and I think...
Go ahead, because I slightly disagree with that point, but I think it's a fair one given the state of it, because I think that's the case for their defense currently. Now, I still think this scheme can work. They just don't have the parts to make this scheme work right now. That's the more important thing. Like, they're getting guys that are just getting picked on. The third cornerback the last 2 years has just been abused in this scheme. And it's because that third cornerback, frankly, has just not been good enough. Right. There's a reason Isaac Yiadom was available to be signed. I know that he was the superstar of 49ers training camp, Isaac Yiadom. But there was a reason nobody wanted to sign him, and the 49ers signed him for the veteran minimum like 4 weeks after free agency started. There's a reason, some of these guys like George Odom, there's a reason he wasn't made to be a starting safety. So, like, they don't have the personnel. When Greenlaw is there, they can play the same scheme. And if you want to isolate Greenlaw in those positions, that's a bad matchup for you. You're not going to pick on Greenlaw. Now Campbell can be picked on. Now other guys can be picked on. And the biggest bailout that they had before is that they would be able to get pressure on the quarterback. Now, yesterday's game was a unique situation because they almost avoided drop back pass completely. In the moments they did throw the ball down the field, it was either off play action or they would max protect and know that they were taking a shot and take that shot. But this defensive line, and it doesn't help that they're missing Javon Hargrave, who frankly has not been good enough for the last year and a half. I'm so disappointed because I thought he was going to be a massive, massive signing for them. He's not been that good, but it's just not very good. This defensive line is not very good. Leonard Floyd, not very good. Malik Collins, The rest of them, not very good.
It's not good. It's just flat out not good. And
Malik Collins is pretty good, I guess.
Their defense was predicated on, we're going to be fundamentally sound every play, and we're going to have our guys, our stars, be stars. We've got more good players, and we're going to beat you more often than not. And you know what? Their stars are not playing like stars. They don't have the horses anymore. They just don't. And I think that Kyle kind of recognized it. I think that's why he went after Steve Spagnuolo in the offseason. I think that's why he went after Bill Belichick in the offseason. I think he did recognize that they need a little more complexity on defense. It didn't work out. And so then what I think his plan was to go get Brandon Staley. But they knew they were going to get a pile of crap from people for hiring Brandon Staley. So they did this Nick Sorensen, Brandon Staley, two co-manager Dunder Mifflin situation we got now as defensive coordinator, and it's not working. And at some point, if it goes bad, you watch, Brandon Staley will either be the defensive coordinator officially, or it'll say, Brandon Staley is going to have an increased role in the defense this week. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know how that reflects on Nick Sorensen at this point, right? Because all we heard after week one is, their defense is back. Their defense is back. But you know what? You know what's problematic to me? It's the only thing we hear about Nick Sorensen. I'm yet to hear somebody say something about Nick Sorensen other than the fact that he does what he's supposed to. Which is not really a great reflection, because go listen to how players used to talk about D'Amico or what they would describe about Saleh. Now, Richard Sherman was there at the time, so you've got a much more talkative and eloquent player describing these things, and maybe he would be doing that for Nick Sorensen, but Fred Warner is an extremely good speaker. Nick Bosa talks quite well. There's a lot of players, Hufanga, so many different players, Brown, all these guys talk very, very well, and they have not been very effusive in terms of assistance to the defense. They have not been effusive in terms of their praise for Nick Sorensen. But Rob, I don't think it's the scheme and all that. They're just not that talented. And they're not admitting that to themselves. In years past, 10 defensive linemen would make this team, and we would say 11 and 12 had the possibility of making this team. This year, 6 were probably NFL worthy, if I'm being honest. They can't look at Robert Beal and ask him to do anything. Jordan Elliott is a 2-down player. And if that, he's literally part of their goal line and bigger packages. So there's a problem there in terms of their defensive line. At linebacker, I thought Campbell would be okay. I wanted Eric Kendricks like everybody else. Him reneging was very difficult. I thought Campbell would be okay. I was totally wrong. And if you go back and watch, Campbell was a little bit of a disaster last year in Green Bay. He was banged up all the time. Now he's not banged up, and he's quite a bit of a disaster for the 49ers. And then this secondary, I always thought it was questionable. Maybe it gets better now that Hufanga is fully there and healthy. I'm still concerned with this Hufanga and Brown duo long-term. I think they do too many of the same things best, and they're utilized the same way. And so I'm interested to see how it works out. But Mustafa very much looks like a rookie. Hufanga very much looks rusty. Brown is okay. And George Odom is a special teamer. This is not like the makings. Like when we were talking about this defense in 2019, we were talking about all-pro DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, who's a Pro Bowl level player, D Ford, who's a Pro Bowl level player, Nick Bosa, who's an all-pro, Fred Warner, who's an all-pro, Dre Greenlaw has made all-pro teams in his career, Richard Sherman was an all-pro. You know what I'm saying? Like there was one guy, Ahkello Witherspoon, that we would single out as a weakness on this defense. There's 6 different spots where we don't feel like there's a lot of competence on this defense now, and there's not great depth behind them. The other thing was they were loaded in terms of depth in years past. There would be the Ronnie Blairs, those kinds of players coming off of the bench. It doesn't exist. This is what happens when you have a really good defense for a long time and you start paying few guys. Your depth starts to go away. You don't have the same athletes. That's what they're going through. They didn't admit it to themselves. They just kept signing older, aging players, kept trying to patchwork, getting rid of Armstead, signing Collins. The way they handled this defense in the offseason is the disaster. Now they just have to find the best way to utilize it, which I agree with you is not their current scheme.
If you don't have the talent, you make up for it with a creative, deceptive scheme.
Right.
That's
and I think you nailed that exact point, which is why they'll probably do the Staley thing if this thing continues and gets a lot worse, because they'll say he's bringing a uniqueness, something new, something different.
Cassie Miller, YouTube channel member, says the 49ers are going to the assistant to the defensive coordinator with the whole Brandon Staley, Nick Sorensen thing, or to put it another way.
We were thinking of having 2 branch managers in Scranton, both of you guys working as co-managers. Jim would handle the day-to-day, and Michael, you would focus on clients and big picture stuff.
That's what the 49ers plan.
You know what's hilarious? Brandon Staley as the assistant head coach is really doing the big picture client stuff.
That's what I'm saying. Perfect. And you know what? I got to pat myself on the back. Come on. How fast did I get that? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, that is good. But that's also the greatest show of all time. Come on now, Rob.
It's quite good. Not going to lie. Luis.
Quite good. We're talking about the greatest show of all time.
No. Luis Fernando Aguilar Alonso says this defensive scheme is terrible. By the way, that's my favorite name to read on the show. It gives me Jim Tomsula era vibes. What was that guy's name?
That was genius, but it was worse the year after with Jim O'Neill and the worst run defense in NFL history with Chip Kelly. I don't think it's anywhere near that bad. Like, the Rams are really smart. I thought McVay had a great game plan. Stafford's really good. He played unbelievable. But dude, like, at some point, we've got to start being honest about some of these players on this defense that were anointed this offseason for no reason. All I heard is they have a better defensive line. Malik Collins is better than Eric Armstead. They have better linebackers. They have better secondary. They have better all of this. Most deepest corners in NFL history because Rock Ya-Sin and Isaac Yiadom, who nobody else wanted to sign, the 49ers signed them.
Yeah, I mean, I fell into the trap about the defense potentially being better. I didn't think that Malik Collins was better than Eric Armstead. I thought that
you didn't say overall these things, Rob.
I thought they could be better overall because Armstead would be on and off the field. That was my feeling on that one. But I was wrong about the defense. I was completely wrong. I take full ownership of that. It's not a good defense. And Brock Purdy had an interesting comment after the game. He said, when the defense makes a stop, we have to score. I think they know. I think in their heart of hearts, they know. At least the offense has been told, like, we have to, because the defense can't do it. And
look at how much they've gone for it on 4th down this year, man.
Yep. Which I love.
That's the perfect thing of it. Because the funny thing is, like, the argument Shanahan would always make immediately with these type of questions, he would talk about how good their defense is and how he felt like nobody's scoring on their defense, right? Like, he'd be like, I feel in that moment, nobody's scoring on our defense, so I just want to ride with them. I don't think he feels that at all.
Yep. And he shouldn't, really. He shouldn't, because the defense has proven time and time again, they cannot be counted on to get any kind of stop in any situation. Anytime the defense or the offense needs a big play, they just throw it deep, and it's either caught or it's a pass interference. It works like 9 out of 10 times. It's like watching that Carson Wentz game when he was on the Colts a few years ago. Stafford and McVay figured out, we're just chucking this thing deep. And what I said, Vish, about the game was because they were picking up those chunk plays, they had 7 plays of 15 yards or more in the game. And because they were picking up those chunk plays, they could stick with the running game, even though it wasn't really that effective, but they never had to abandon it because they were still making progress down the field.
Exactly. And it was effective for them in situational moments. Like, Kyron Williams has been a terrific red zone runner his entire career. He was outstanding yesterday in the red zone running the football. Short yardage, anytime they had short yardage, the run game felt free. And I think what was even more concerning is as the game kept going, and this hasn't happened to the 49ers defense in the past versus great quarterbacks, but it felt like Stafford was able to get so deep into the game despite being so undermanned with how bad their offensive line was, all the different pieces moving around there, and how bad the receivers were, all the different pieces moving around, he was almost calling the 49ers defense as it was coming. So he was almost like always prepared to have the answer because he knew exactly what was coming, what fronts they were in. I mean, you go look at the game tying touchdown, I want to say, to Kyron Williams. He checks to the run, and then he puts his hands up as he hands it off because he knows that they got him in that look and he got them into the right check for the run. That was happening way too much. And I think for a game where they were so undermanned, Stafford should have never felt that comfortable. Darnold should have never felt that comfortable. The key with the 49ers defense is they don't let quarterbacks feel comfortable. Like at the end of the day, that's what happens. Like the Dak Prescott's, why does he play so bad? He panics, constantly under pressure, constantly feeling like they're so fast, they're hitting so hard. They don't scare anybody anymore, Rob. Like for Stafford to do that, for McVay to do that, and I understand so many things went wrong for the 49ers, but that game plan said that they weren't scared of the 49ers defense despite having Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson as their starting receivers to go with Tutu Atwell and having a patchwork offensive line that included Rob Guerrero and Vish Kumar and possibly getting call-ups to come start for them in the case that someone got hurt.
Ooh, let me tell you. That is not a defensive line you want. With you and me in the middle, we're going to have trouble stopping the run.
Even if they combine the two of us, we might not be big enough to be one offensive lineman.
I don't know how tall you are, but you don't want one of your D tackles to be 5'10 and 140 pounds. And that's what I am. So
I'm 5'11", 160, so I'm not giving you much more.
There you go. That's
what I said. Two of us is not making one offensive lineman if we're being realistic.
No. Marsha Mello points this out, and Kyle said it on the conference call too. They had 150 yards on 3 plays downfield and only 1 catch. They were 2 penalties and then the 50-yard catch to Tutu Atwell. It was just infuriating. It's infuriating when you're watching from home and you're like, I know what the offense is going to do. And you talked about it. They never make opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable. Darnold was not uncomfortable at all.
Rodgers almost made himself uncomfortable, if we're being honest.
I think he was shook because it was week 1 and he hadn't played, honestly.
And the 49ers have been his boogeyman. I think he kind of was rattled coming into the game, and early they were a little bit around him.
And the frustrating thing is, both those guys, Darnold and Stafford, have proven in their careers, you make them uncomfortable and they will give you chances at the football. And they never did that with Darnold. And they did get 1 interception with Darnold, but for the most part, they didn't do it with Darnold, and especially in critical spots. And they didn't do it at all.
They didn't do it at all with Darnold. And I'm the biggest Matthew Stafford fan, right? Like everybody knows how big of a Matthew Stafford fan I am. Dude, this game that he played yesterday is the missing piece in Matthew Stafford's entire career. The ability to just play like a game manager and go win it late. Like that game yesterday, Matthew Stafford in Detroit probably throws for 350, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and the 49ers win by 2 scores. Because they would have been undermanned and Stafford would have just stood in there, got hit so many times, but made big throw, a couple mistakes, but he would have just kept competing. That mature game yesterday of not taking any risks, just keeping them alive, converting key plays, being Superman only when he needed to, like that's been missing from Matthew Stafford's entire career. And I think the thing about Matthew Stafford is that guy that I described that existed in Detroit, like that guy that, well, you can get the competitor out of, that you can get to start playing that game, get out of the realm of what they plan to do. He exists. You just got to hit him a couple of times. You got to rile him up. You got to get him into the game. The Niners never made Matthew Stafford lose faith in that game plan that they were going to win playing that conservative style. And he's a guy that you can make lose faith in there, and you can make play individual, and you can make play hero ball. And they were completely unable to do that.
It's just not the same defense that we have come to love, and we have to adjust our thinking. I think the 49ers already have. I think you're going to see Kyle continue to go for it more on 4th down because I think he realizes the strength of this team has to be the offense, because if it is close, the defense can't be counted on. They just can't. You know, Ryan Hensley tweeted out, Steve Wilkes' defense through the first 3 games allowed 13.3 points per game. Sorensen's defense is allowing 23 points per game. And Wilkes was already on the hot seat by now. Sorensen, crickets about him. I I don't like what's happening with this season so far. It just really feels like it is spiraling. And if Brock Purdy can't play this week, and if you're just joining late and you didn't realize Brock Purdy has a sore back, he got an MRI. Supposedly it came back clean. Who knows? Hopeful he can practice on Wednesday, Vish. If it's Brandon Allen this week against the Patriots, guess what? They could easily lose that one too.
Yeah, agreed. You know, I don't know why I was like that at the top of the show. I'm more to my senses. I think New England sucks, but yeah, that could be a disaster, especially with how reliant they've been on Brock Purdy, because he has been the engine for the offense in all 3 games, and he's played pretty well, honestly, in all 3 games. So I do think that's a deal. Wow, dude, Jacksonville is just getting smoked.
Yeah, because Trevor Lawrence stinks and nobody wants to say it. He's not good, okay? He's not good.
Dude, I don't want to put this jinx on myself, but like I picked Jacksonville to be a total disaster this year. I don't know why. It was just kind of like, one of those things where like when you're predicting things going into an NFL season, you kind of say, well, I need to pick a few things random that nobody else is picking because that's what happens in an NFL season. Right. I do that. Like I take that into account. That's part of my thought process. And one of those things is, Jacksonville is just going to be a total unmitigated disaster. And I don't want to jinx it because, like, who relishes in the disaster and the horrendous suffering of other people other than me? But Jacksonville looks like a disaster.
Shout out to Sour Jet Sam, who he's a great follow on Twitter.
He's great.
Don't follow him. He tweeted out, he said the type of bleep I'm on, and depression in parentheses, and it's just pictures of Kyle Shanahan in the locker room on the ground, just utterly defeated. There's that famous picture of him where he's leaning up against the cart and he just looks like lost. Like he doesn't know how to fix it. Everything is in flames, and he's got 3 other pictures and he looks exactly the same way. And doesn't it feel more like a 2020, 2017, 2018 type of year right now?
No, because they have Brock Purdy.
He's hurt.
He's still going to play, right? Like the MRI wasn't serious. So it doesn't feel like that to me yet. I really feel like, Rob, these next games are more than winnable. Now, the way they lost this Rams game shouldn't give you confidence about them winning anything because it's like a complete disaster. But the next games are winnable. I think Purdy is playing really, really good. Mason is playing good. Jennings is obviously playing unreal combined with how he played yesterday. There's still a lot for this team to go off of. It's just, I think that the expectations maybe were too high coming into this year. So people are realizing maybe this isn't a Super Bowl team. I didn't look at them as a Super Bowl team coming into this year. I felt like this was the first time I didn't think their roster was the best in the NFL before the season. And that was the first time I felt that way in 4 or 5 years. But they are a playoff team to me, and I think they're very much still there. Two NFC losses though, in terms of when we talk about later in the year, that's big. That's
not ideal.
Really tough. Yeah,
not ideal. Now look, if you can get a win against the Patriots this week, you'll be 2-2, and then you're like
division games coming up.
You'd be like, okay, you know what? 2-2 with all the injuries they've had. It's manageable. Like you're not in a terrible spot at 2-2 in the NFC, especially when you look at, I know that Seattle's obviously undefeated and Minnesota is undefeated right now, but Dallas is 1-2. The Lions are only 2-1. Nobody in the Packers are 2-1. Like it's not, right. It hasn't really, nobody's really run away from you that much that you won't have a chance to catch.
And we're not really sure who's good yet, right? Because
Agreed.
Green Bay has looked good the last 2 weeks, but Green Bay lost to Philadelphia, who's not looked that good, but they're 2-1. And then New Orleans looked really, really good, but then New Orleans lost to Philadelphia, and we're not sure how good Philadelphia is. And then Detroit, who we thought was going to. Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did. I'm sorry. My
yesterday.
bad.
And then we thought Detroit was the team. They were going to be the class of the NFC this year. They were going to be the most talented team. They lost to Tampa Bay. So maybe Tampa Bay is really good, but then Tampa Bay got steamrolled by a bad Denver team at home yesterday. So we don't really know if any of these teams are good. That's the point I'm coming to. So it's still very much alive, and Brock Purdy is playing really good football, which would be the number one concern for me if he wasn't playing good. The fact that he's playing good keeps them alive in this entire stretch, but I agree. Like they can never lose a game the way they lost yesterday. That was just a total disaster. That's the only part of this that's 2017, 2018 to me, Rob. Like losing these games from almost improbable situations.
Right. The one couple things I did like, obviously Jennings, I mean, unbelievable. Javon Jennings, just a fantastic effort. The other thing I liked was that they brought the play action back, Fish. They play action passed at least 9 times. I was trying to keep track yesterday. I may have missed a couple, but it was at least 9 times, and it was successful almost every time, whether it was Brock on a scramble or they got a touchdown on that. I loved that fake pitch to Mason, and then Brock was looking at BA. He was covered. He went back to Jennings, and Jennings is standing alone in the end zone, wide open. They got away from the play action against the Vikings. I love that they came back to it. I think it really helps, especially when you're undermanned. I hope they keep it up. Please, Kyle, keep doing that because he's been sort of trending away from that recently.
100%. I agree. And the Rams also went to it, and they were having a lot of success with the play action too. So goes to show it's still alive and well.
Yeah, this just didn't. Play action makes your quarterback life easier. So hopefully Brock Purdy can play. Hopefully George Kittle can come back. They're last in the league in yak right now, Bish. Think about that. A Kyle Shanahan team, last in the league in yak.
Well, when Christian McCaffrey's hurt, the Vikings tackle, and honestly, Debo has not been that impressive after the catch this year. There hasn't been really that many Debo broken tackles, whatever. Kittle's obviously always solid and excellent after the catch, but now he's hurt. And yeah, Brandon Ayuk has not been very good after the catch this year.
Training camp hero Debo Samuel hurt. Oh, but he was there for every training camp. Guess what? Debo hurt.
The more frustrating. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
He's hurt, just like he is pretty much like every other year. Like he's always hurt. You can't rely on him.
I'm not worried about that, Rob. I think the more frustrating thing is I didn't see like what everybody was talking about. Sure, he looks 5 pounds lighter than he's looked the last couple of years, but I'm not seeing the Debo Samuel I used to see. Like his production the first 2 weeks to me was a product of they kept feeding him the ball like he's the number one option on this offense. So therefore he produced because he's pretty good still. But Debo Samuel, 2-3 years ago with that level of targets and target share, there's a different level of production you're getting from that. And so I still think Kittle's the one. I don't know when his body or what his body is doing or whether he'll be able to hold up. But he's, to me, is the one you can rely upon other than Jennings, especially because this McCaffrey situation is what it is. Do you want to hit the Trent Williams IV part of this? With him also telling Christina Pink that he's still getting back into shape?
Yeah, he told it was extremely difficult. That's what he told Christina Pink. Because he didn't have training camp and he didn't have a preseason. Shocker. You know, we said it last year. Oh, well, Nick Bosa keeps himself in shape. He's going to be just fine. Guess what?
That was me.
He wasn't fine. Debo Samuel wasn't fine. Trent Williams is not fine. There were multiple plays yesterday, Vish, where he gets bullied back into Brock Purdy. And this is Trent Williams we're talking about. Multiple plays where he's reaching for guys. He's getting overpowered. He does not look anywhere close to himself. I don't give a rat's ass what the PFF grade was. I watched the game twice.
Yeah, he's not been playing the same way the first 3 weeks for sure. There's been a couple more mistakes. There's a weekly holding penalty, which almost always comes at a very inopportune time. So there's stuff with him. And I'm glad you went to the holdouts because the other one is Brandon Ayuk. And you know what's missing to me from Brandon Ayuk, Rob? And this is something I've questioned a few times in his career, maybe to a point where I question his ability to become a true number one wide receiver early in his career because of this. And I was certainly wrong, and that's not certainly the case. But where's the fire? Where's the guy that in the game like yesterday, he seemed okay that Javon Jennings is the superstar of this team. Brandon Ayuk, you just got paid $30 million. They gave you 10 targets yesterday. Where's the compete? Where's the fire? He looked defeated. We have heard the last 2 training camps about Brandon Ayuk's leadership, Brandon Ayuk's toughness, his standing up to Fred Warner. He should have been a team captain. Where's any of that? Where's Brandon Ayuk's toughness? Because he went and talked to the Rams sideline after he dropped the ball with Jake Brendel trying to throw it to him at the end of the game?
Oh,
These are the things that I think are missing from Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk is a great talent, so he's going to play himself back to shape. They're going to find their rhythm. He's going to produce. What's missing once this contract has come the last 2 games is that physicality, that effort, that presence. That's what this offense needs, and he's never had to do that. That's the second part of being a number 1 option that no one talks about. It's not just shouldering the effort, it's shouldering the pressure of needing to produce at that level and uplift everybody week after week. And that was the difference between him versus Kittle or him versus Debo that nobody wanted to talk about, because McCaffrey shouldered that for him the last 2 years when he's played his best football. Yesterday was the pressure was on him. Javon Jennings lived up to that pressure. Javon Jennings lived in that pressure. Javon Jennings was enjoying that opportunity. Brandon Ayuk wasn't. Brandon Ayuk looked like he didn't want that. He didn't want to get those 10 targets and be that guy. I don't know if it's just a case of he's not fully back into it or what the swing of things are, but that's something to me that's missing. And that would be the thing I question about him. I didn't feel like the drops were so much on him, though he should catch those footballs. Like, they were also not Brock Purdy's best throws. He also did get missed at the end of the game, sure, but where is the guy who wants to be the guy in these moments, who wants to be the guy that bails his team out? Instead, he looks lost. He looks like he doesn't want to be there. He looks disinterested. These are the things that I'm questioning with Brandon Ayuk more so than anything. And I don't know that changes even when he starts to play better, Rob. I think that's why I'm bringing it up. I think this is a part of who he is. And that to me is problematic, because can he shoulder the pressure and load of being this guy once these guys are fully gone?
And it's tough when you go on the pivot and you think, you say you think you're the best wide receiver on the team, this, that, and the other thing. And look, I get it. A lot of times Ayuk was doubled and that created opportunities for Javon Jennings. I totally acknowledge that, right? You always talk about everybody benefits from everybody. And so Jennings probably got more opportunities to shine than Ayuk did. But you're right. 5 catches on 10 targets is very un-Brandon Ayuk-like, right?
It's the Browns game all over again.
I mean, it's hard to ask somebody to change who they've always been. And Ayuk has always been this kind of low key, he's not a rah-rah guy, right? They got their juice from Debo. They got their juice from Kittle. They get it a little from Purdy, but it's weird. It doesn't seem to have quite the same effect. Because Purdy, when he makes big plays, he's demonstrative and stuff like that. But it just seems I don't know. It's different when Debo and Kittle make the plays.
And I don't want to just call it rah-rah, because I think you can be a quiet guy and still have this confidence, and people can still feel like, hey, he's there. He's locked in. He just doesn't need to tell us that he's locked in. Marvin Harrison used to feel like this, where what did Marvin Harrison ever say or do? But you knew on a big play that they could go to Marvin Harrison and Marvin Harrison was going to make that play. Anquan Bolden was the opposite. He was extremely demonstrative, and he was extremely cognizant of letting you know that he's in the game. Steve Smith, another example, but they would be able to be guys that would be fed off of. Christian McCaffrey is not demonstrative. He's a guy that in every big moment we feel that he's the number 1 option in this team. Get him the freaking ball. He's going to make the freaking play. That confidence is missing from Brandon Ayuk. That was what I questioned early in his career. Everybody said he's picked it up. He's got it. He's got it. He's going to have it. He's going to have it. And maybe he does. But yesterday was a great opportunity with those guys missing for him to say, I'm 27 years old. I'm paid $30 million. I'm the best freaking wide receiver on this team. And he didn't have to have the game Javon Jennings had, but we didn't need to not feel his presence and feel him disappear the way he did yesterday. Those are 2 completely different things on the completely different ends of the spectrum. And that's something that's concerning to me if we're talking about the long-term future of him needing to be that guy, because one day there won't be Debo to carry that pressure. One day there won't be McCaffrey to carry that pressure. They paid him to be the guy that carries that pressure.
I think it's part of the reason why they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round and Jacob Cowing later in the draft. I think that all goes into the stew, quite frankly. And look, Ayuk had a huge drop, and I don't care that the throw was a little behind him. Rich Madrid put out the film. Oh, look, this throw was on his back shoulder and it hit part of this guy's helmet. Dude, you're supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver. You get paid to catch balls that aren't perfect too. Damn, man, come on.
Javon Jennings is freaking mossing Quentin Lake.
Right. What are we talking about?
Right? And that's where Brandon Ayuk has almost become like the Brock. You know how people say like with Brock Purdy, like, oh, he needs this to be perfect. He needs this to be perfect.
Yes.
Like the people that go against him, that's what they say. That has been the Brandon Ayuk conversation for 2, 3, 4 years. And I've been someone that's kind of been waves within it because I feel like people think I'm defending Ayuk. People think I'm anti-Ayuk. But this idea that Ayuk's entire contribution to the 49ers on a week-to-week basis is people just putting out film clips of erroneous routes sometimes, especially 2, 3 years ago, where he would get open and it wouldn't even be part of the progression. People, Ayuk's just dusting guys on the backside. Like, nobody's just getting him the ball. Like, no, there's a reason they're not throwing him the ball at that time. He improved so much. But even in this game, to pretend like, oh, things weren't perfect, this happened, at a certain point, you need a guy who makes $30 million to make a play in a game like that when things aren't perfect. That's what Matthew Stafford did. He made something out of nothing with Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson and these guys. If we expect Brock Purdy to do that when he's a $900,000 paid quarterback, right? We expect him to do that. We expect him to elevate himself. Certainly we can expect that from the $30 million wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk. Certainly we can expect him to make 1 or 2 plays that weren't perfect, but you got him the ball and he did something. That's why you pay him $30 million and you're not paying someone else $30 million. What did he do yesterday that a league average receiver couldn't have given the 49ers?
Oof.
They're not better. I'm not saying a league average receiver is better than Brandon Ayuk. But what did Brandon Ayuk provide in yesterday's game that a league average receiver couldn't have?
Sorry, you caught me in mid-sip there. Usually 11 is the only one that can do that. You're not wrong. Like, and I'm sorry, you may say it's unfair, whatever. Once you make that contract, the expectation goes up. Those are just the facts. That's the reality of the situation. And you're right. There are too many times where Brandon Ayuk gets let off the hook because things aren't perfect. Well, it's tough. Jawan Jennings is mossing people. He's making tough catches over the middle. I need more from you, Ayuk. I need more. I completely agree. Let's wrap it up with this.
It's a great opportunity for him too, right? Like, okay, we've questioned him now. He's got a lot of game and a lot of season and a ton of talent. He should have no problem stepping up and being a number 1 receiver. He is talented enough to be that guy. He got paid to be that guy. He's good enough to be that guy. It's time. He needs to produce like that guy.
Mario Gonzalez says, you guys think Purdy's injury is serious? Sorry, joined the stream late. We don't know. He had an MRI on his back. It came back clean, according to Kyle Shanahan. They're hopeful he can practice Wednesday, Vish. Hopeful that your starting quarterback can practice when you're coming off a bad loss to the Rams and a bad loss to the Vikings, and you have a chance to right the ship, and now it might be Brandon Allen.
And the worst part is they just need him to carry such a big load right now, right? Like, that's the toughest part. Yeah. Like, they need so much from Brock right now. And he's been giving it to him. Like, yesterday's game, they needed so much from his legs, and he was giving it to them with his legs. But this is week in and week out of being a $60 million passer. That's the other part of this. That load he carried yesterday, that's what you do as a $60 million quarterback. That's what Matthew Stafford has done for 15 years.
But that's where the biggest thing I think we'll see. If Brandon Allen has to come in, you're going to be like, oh, my God, this offensive line is terrible. They've been terrible. But Brock Purdy has made up for it. There was that play on that 3rd and 4 play where Brock Purdy drops back to pass and there's nothing there. And he gets pressure and he rolls out to the right. And first he breaks the tackle because the guy's trying to tackle him. Then another guy's coming up to make the tackle. And Brock does the Mahomes style. Let me do a pump fake, even though I have no intention of actually throwing the ball. I'm just trying to create space. And he creates just enough space, gets to the edge, dives for the first down. That is an elite play. If Patrick Mahomes did that, people would be going crazy, and they should, because it's a great play. But Brock made that play, and he doesn't get nearly the credit for covering for this deficiencies along the offensive line. And that was on 3rd down. It was a huge freaking play.
Oh yeah, and that was very meaningful in the game. Or the second touchdown, McKivitz gets completely blown up right off the ball, and he doesn't like the timing, everything of the play doesn't get thrown off because he gets himself to a spot and then calmly finds Jennings. Yeah, they need him right now. They need him.
And God help him. Rest up, Brock. I don't know what you got to do for the back, but figure it out because we're all terrified right now.
Yeah, it would. So you said 2018, 2017. If he's not playing, then yeah, of course I would feel like that. That's how this would turn into really fast, really
Then
fast.
If you like high draft picks, then you may get some if he's out for an extended period of time, because with this defense playing the way it's playing and the injuries they have on offense, yeah, it's going to be the bad old times in San Francisco.
I think the tough thing with the defense is I just don't know what they do to get better.
Nothing.
Like, I don't think that there's an antidote unless you can like get these guys to rush better and all of that. Like, if I think back to when they had these issues in 21, like one of the big things that happened is they got healthier. Josh Norman no longer had to play corner. Like Ebukam, these guys were playing better. You know what I mean? Like, they had a defensive line that had the opportunity to get better because those were young players fitting into the scheme. Malik Collins is 30-something. Leonard Floyd is 32. I guess Yetur Gross-Matos is maybe a guy they could rely upon, but there's just not enough there that I think they can go to that's now going to make significant changes. And then there's this Mooney Ward situation where he's banged up, and I think he's going to play through it anyway. He's playing for a contract, so there's some other complications with that I'm looking into. Where do they go, Rob? Where do they get better?
You can say Greenlaw, but Kyle said today in the conference call that he's not coming back till at least midseason. And as Kyle said, we're a long way from midseason yet. You know, you still got at least another 4 games, depending on what your definition of the middle of the season is. You can say play Curtis Robinson, like the Smitty says. Maybe that helps. I mean, I don't think you can get worse than Devondre Campbell. I'm not saying Curtis Robinson's good, but I mean, I think you got to try to come up with a better scheme on defense, frankly, and try to hide some of the fact that the talent is just not what it once was there. But really, it's got to be the offense. It has to be the offense. And it's crazy to say that, like, you have to score every time. But I think Brock was right. When the defense gets a stop, you have to at least get points.
I think they need to start getting more specific with their personnel. I think it should be less, like, I think the scheme is fine, but there's third downs where they might have to go dime now and make Hufanga or Jair Brown come down and be the second hook curl player when they play 3 deep and stuff like that. Because Devondre Campbell is getting isolated in coverage and getting picked on. He's a total liability. And none of those linebackers that they put on, maybe like Winters, they can run a little bit better. But maybe they got to start putting a safety, whether it's Mustafa, whether it's Brown, whether it's Hufanga, play 3 safeties, do something like that. But I think they got to get more creative with their personnel mix and matching. Yadam has to be a matchup-specific corner, only bigger, taller receivers that can't really run or change directions. Otherwise, he's a total mess. Or play Green. I know Green held, but just put him on the field.
Put him out there.
Right? Even though I don't know what. Like, again, that would be a good question for Kyle Shanahan. Probably won't be asked ever. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it, guys. I think those are the things, honestly, that's left. But I don't know where they go. I don't know where they go.
Andre Garibay says Yadam is Ambry Thomas with long hair. Ooh, it certainly feels like it's just everybody in that spot is a liability, and they immediately get targeted every time the team needs a play. Go to that guy, Yadam.
Because they're not good, Rob.
Right, they're not good.
This idea that Isaac Yadam, I didn't want to make a big deal of it, because at a certain point when everybody is saying one thing and you make a big deal of saying the other point, you either come across as annoying to other people so they don't hear your point, or they just completely ignore your point because nobody else is thinking like that. But this is a guy that was signed 3 weeks after the start of free agency. This was not a coveted free agent. Go look at the contract they gave him. Now go look at the threshold when we're talking about the best corners, starting corners in the NFL. Usually we're talking about top 40 picks, top 50 picks. How many teams have 2 good corners? How many teams have 3 good corners?
Right.
So if the position is completely sparse, the demand for the position is high, and there's a low supply, now there's going to be this hidden jewel of Isaac Yadam, who's been in the league for 8 years, that nobody knows about 4 weeks into free agency. Bullshit. Give me a break.
I agree. I think that says it all. Like, the market speaks, and sometimes the market misses, but they usually don't miss this bad. Isaac Yadam is under contract. His cap number is $1.9 million for 2024. That's his deal.
We got a little bit more than league minimum.
Right. And he's got a void year next year. But like you said, we need corners in the league. And if this guy was that good, he wouldn't sign for less than $2 million. Like, what are we talking about?
8 years into the league, or 7 years, 6 years.
So I'm for the play Green. You know what? Play him.
Hey, I
What?
think he was the one with the infamous pick six on the Jimmy G. Was it a safety and a pick six on the same play?
Oh God, who knows? I don't know. Look, not about style points this year. I think a lot of the games are going to be ugly, which is a little scary to me because when the games are ugly, it comes down to management. And I have not trusted Kyle Shanahan's game management, although he does seem to be more willing to go for it on fourth, which is good. We'll see next week. We'll hold our breath. We are holding our breath right now with Brock Purdy. We're holding our breath with this defense. We're holding our breath with all the injuries. Christian McCaffrey's in Germany right now, having a schnitzel, trying to figure out what the heck's going on with his Achilles. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before we find out that Christian McCaffrey needs surgery and he's going to be done for the year. But hopefully I'm wrong. But we are all holding our breath right now in 49ers land, Vish.
I got an end of the year take for you that I'll give it to you right now. Don't re-sign anybody on this defense that's due for a new contract. Don't pay them. Go get young rookies, 4-year contracts and put them back on your defense and make it younger again. Buffalo, great example. Let all those old, overrated guys walk, like Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, who were just getting too much media attention for how good they actually were. Has their defense looked like it's lost that much of a beat? No. These younger, more physical athletes, a lot of times these guys on defense are a little overrated. Their name value often gives them credit at points in their career when they probably don't deserve it. That's why Justin Simmons gets cut after being a second-team All-Pro, according to the media. Not that he still isn't really good, but they wouldn't be cutting him if he was a completely inept, valuable second-team All-Pro player. And my point with that is no need to re-sign Diamador Lenore. Great player, but you can find another Diamador Lenore in the draft. No need to re-sign Talanoa Hufanga. You can find another guy like that. That's my take. They've already re-signed enough players. They got to get younger, deeper. Regardless of how this season goes. Obviously, I still think they're a playoff team. Even within that, I think that there's multiple corners that need to be drafted and signed. There needs to be that money to go around, and forking over $15 million to Diamador Lenore, I don't think is the answer.
Diamador Lenore is 24, so he's still young.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think I'm off the re-sign Mooney Ward train. I think I'm on the re-sign Diamador Lenore train, but I agree. Everybody else,
they've re-signed too many people, dude. They've forked over too much money to 2 or 3 or 4 players.
But who is the bad guy that they re-signed?
I don't think it's the bad guy, but at a certain point, you got to let some of these guys who are maybe good, and Diamador Lenore is very good at 24, just walk, because we need 3-4 players. We don't just need one Diamador Lenore. And right now, their secondary needs 3-4 players.
But Diamador Lenore, I don't know. I think you keep Lenore. I think Hargrave is gone after this year. They had an out in his contract. He's going to be gone after the year.
Yeah. That one's gone. But they need 5-6 defensive linemen, dude. They need 3 different defensive lineman starters long term.
I think you got to draft them. I mean, the free agency swings and misses by this team have been devastating.
But once they get drafted, they need space, right? Like, you can't have a position where they just sit the bench for 2 years and then you cut them Drake Jackson style. Like, they got to get on the freaking field, which is why I'm saying, like, you got to let these guys walk. I know, Rob. It's time to go. Show's about to end. No need for this. Show's ending. Sorry, guys. See you next time.
So Vish is saying that they need to draft a bunch of guys and they need to see the field. I could have sworn someone on this program was saying just that about 45 minutes ago. Who was that?
But they don't not see the field because the guy is anti-rookie. That was the argument. We were having a different argument. I agree they need to see the field. It was why they aren't seeing the field. But yeah, someone in the comments said we should find a new Vish. Hell yeah, find a new Vish.
No, we can't ever find a new Vish. Come on, man. By the way, Buffalo is absolutely pantsing Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I mean, it's comical how bad Trevor Lawrence is.
It's comical how pitiful my 1 seed prediction of the Cincinnati Bengals is looking.
They're getting punked right now. 21-10 Commanders with about 2 minutes to go in the first half in that one. Absolutely brutal. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. There's 400 people watching right now. If this is your first time watching, thank you. Please give us a chance here at the Gold Standard 49ers Podcast Network. I promise you, we will earn your time. You will love our coverage of the 49ers. I put it up against anybody on the planet's coverage of the 49ers. We're live every single weekday. We're live after every single 49ers game. We do a 49ers in 5 news update every morning. Please, please, please give us a shot. I promise you, you won't regret it. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to Vish's channel. He has his own YouTube channel. Just search at Vish, or just search Vish Kumaran, I should say. It pops right up. You're also on X at Vish Kumaran. I'm on X at Stats on Fire. Try to enjoy the rest of the Monday Night Football, at least everybody. Let's hold our breath with Brock Purdy, and we'll see what happens, Vish.
They're good. They're going to be okay, Rob. As long as Purdy is okay and stays healthy, they've got a really good shot at the playoffs still.
From your lips to God's ears.